Hi friends, welcome to Tutors Funny channel. Today I am going to teach about the Spring Layer Architecture. This is must when you are professional in Spring Boot. If you are beginner of Spring Boot application, you follow the step. How the Spring Boot works. This is very important stuff. This is a step-by-step Spring Boot works. Okay. If you have idea how to work the Spring Boot, in the practical you easily understand, right? So this is your front-end application. Right, the front end application you are using the Angular or React, right? That is a very famous front end application, right? So if you do something else in the front end and it goes to the imagine if you have a registration form on the front end, if you are fill all the forms details, click submit button, it goes to the controller, right? Controller to pass the data to service, right? It directly not pass it in between controller and service. There will be the interface. The interface is handling the stuff, right? The service as an interface, right? The service to pass the data into the repository. What is the meaning? What is the repository? Repository is the query handling stuff. In your core Java, you have studied insert into you write some coding in your statement, right? The SQL statement, you write the SQL statement. Here in Spring Boot, all the SQL statement will be wrote in the repository. So all the things are managed by the repository. Repository is not a class, it is an interface. That interface manage all the SQL queries. Right? If you want to load the data and all the particular CRUD details, all the data is available here, the repository in Spring Boot, right? And repository, it is the one who communicate with the data source. Data source means it's a database, right? Database may be the MySQL or PostgreSQL or MongoDB. It will be get the data and it will be passing to the repository and service and controller and back to your front end. This is how the application works, right? Okay, this is how the application works. Here you can see here repository and data source. In between there will be the entity. What does entity mean? The database columns, the repository can't communicate with this one directly. There will be the part entity. Entity has the same names, right? If you imagine if you have a database as the columns name, address and phone number, the same name, the entity also there, right? The entity is the one who communicate with the class which is communicate with the data source and it will be passing the repository here, right here. This is how the Spring Boot app layer architecture works. The front end passes the controller is passing the service is passing repository is the one who passing to the data source. The data is coming like a DTO format, right? DTO format, right? This is a simple one. When you go to the interview, they are asking you can you draw the layer architecture, how the layer architecture works. You simply say that front end is passing the data to the controller passing the data to service passing the data to repository passing the data to data source. Data source get the data and back to your repository back to your service back to controller to the front end and show the data. Right? This is how the layer architecture work. This is how if you are explaining they understood your good knowledge of Spring Boot application. This is how the layer architecture work, right? Okay. In between controller and service, there will be the interface, right? So repository is the one. This is the interface, not a class, right? This is all the stuff you have to understand, right? If you understand this layer architecture, you just you just see this diagram 2 or 3 times. This is how the layer architecture work in Spring Boot application. If you see 2 or 3 times, it is simply it is in your mind when you are developing the project on Spring Boot application. You understand the flow. The flow is working look like this. Controller, if you are making the controller, after that you are making the service making repository and data source. This is how the flow works. If you understand the flow, it will be easy to understand the Spring Boot and make your future Spring Boot application project. If you are a beginner of Spring Boot application, this is very good experience. share with us. Thank you for watching. Keep watch. I'll be sharing my. I'll see you in my next lecturing. I bring the new Spring Boot video. You all. Thank you for watching.